So my reaction to the Supreme Court judgment is, first of all, the position of the law is that Supreme Court judgment is final and should be obeyed by every person and authority in Nigeria. That is the law. So I am not in anywhere in this interview advocating that the Supreme Court judgment should not be obeyed. No. But we are trained as a lawyer. You can agree or disagree and put your points over respectfully. Now, the summary of the judgment is that the governor ought not to have presented the Appropriation Act to the 4 members, but ought to have presented it to the 27 members. Then, that's the election conducted by this Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission. The local government election is invalid. This is the ratio from what I gathered. So, what it means is that the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission should go and organize another election. That's just what it means. So I heard some people throwing the arguments that there was one extension by the legislature extending the tenure of the former local government chairman, extending. What did I say about rule of law? That was a legislative exercise of an executive function, and that is illegal. That's treasonable. What it is, what they are saying is like the National Assembly have the right, when we are not in a state of war, to extend the tenure of Tinubu without election. That's what they are saying. Can you see how absurd that is? The court has even struck down that portion of the something, if I can remember, as illegal. Because the legislature, you are saying you are for rule of law, and that's why I'm telling you that none of them is for rule of law. And you're saying that the legislature sat down and made law and excluded the Rivers State people from electing their leaders in a democracy, and you say you want to continue. Why didn't you go to court to mandate the governor to organize? And it's not even the governor that organizes election. It's the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission. They are supposed to be independent. So why didn't you go to court to compel them to organize election? But you went to, and you say they have extended your tenure. No. When your tenure finishes, you hand over. If there is no elected person to hand over, then you hand over to the highest civil servant in that office to take charge until an election is done. You cannot replace an illegality with another illegality. I remember saying that I am not in support of Fubara then choosing a caretaker committee because it will be illegal. That the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission must organize an election. So they have organized an election. The Supreme Court said no, they didn't follow certain procedure. So what they should just do is to go and organize another election. And then those things the Supreme Court pointed out, they will now make amends to it. And then the Rivers State will have the people of their choice governing them. So saying that the legislature extended the tenure of the guy, it's treasonable. Because elected people who have tenure, now I'm telling you, another elected people who have tenure, they are extending their tenure. No, if that law is allowed to stand, what it means is that the legislature can sit down and say that they are extending their own tenure and that they can no longer leave when their own tenure is over. So they will stay put. Because you are setting a precedent. And like I told you about principles of law, when you establish a law, it has to be constant. It has to be consistent with one another. So that, for me, is a legal blasphemy. There is nothing like extension of tenure. The former local government chairman, their tenure ended, expired, and has ended. So what the Rivers State Independent Electoral Commission should do is to go back, conduct a fresh election, and have the local government chairman installed by democracy. Now, the other part of it is saying that something should be represented. Well, they will sit down and look at the details of the Supreme Court's judgment and obey it. But the issue of the defection has not been treated by the Supreme Court. You can't infer. Courts and their decisions are done on issue by issue basis. If I recall, when they went to Omotosho, because that was where the case started, the issue was the appropriation bill, the appropriation law, whether it was legal to be presented to 4 members or 27 members. And the court said it shouldn't have been presented to the 4 members. Of course, I disagree with the judgment, citing the earlier Supreme Court judgment of the Plateau State and citing the fact that law should not contradict each other, should be consistent with one another. That's what you call judicial precedent. And citing the principle of law that will make it to be able to perform the function of law, a law should be constant. I disagree with the judgment. But that does not mean that the 27 members have retained their seat, because the law is very clear. When you defect, you lose your seat. Section 109, 1G. And these lawmakers defected, swore an affidavit that they have defected. Affidavit is one of the greatest instruments of law, because you swore. You can go to jail if you come and admit that you lied, because that's perjury. It's there in the court. The mere idea that they are denying that they did not defect meant an admission that they now realize that defection meant they are losing their seat. Courts check all these things. So the mere idea that they are denying they did not defect is a conclusive evidence that they know that when you defect, you lose your seat. So they have defected and they have lost their seat by law. And the court needed not to give an order before the defection is complete, because the court was not mentioned in that procedure that their seat will be vacant. So in my own opinion, in the eyes of the law, they are not members of the Rivers State House of Assembly. And the Supreme Court has not ruled on that, to my knowledge. And as long as that has not been ruled on, there's still a sort of Damocles hanging over their neck. And if we are a people that respect rule of law,